So knowing how to recalibrate to scale is the big issue. And that's a whole lot about, yeah, probably to some degree, it's about what do you want in life? Is that something do you want to create something that has that kind of scale to it? Are you fine with the farm you're raising or the organic milk you're producing and the market you have? You know what? Because I know quite a number of people that say, I don't want to be any bigger. This is cool. This is cool for me. Any bigger is not in my game. So I think people need to get honest with themselves about the nature of the game they are interested in or might be interested in. And then to your point, to my point, you need to make sure you handle the processes that get your day to day. See, you don't need time. You need space. You need room.
David, you're very welcome to the ScaleX Insider podcast. Absolutely delighted and thrilled to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks for the invitation.
You're very welcome. Brilliant. I'm really looking forward to this. Look, we've been chatting off air. Our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small to medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So what does scaling with purpose mean to you, David?
Well, it means keep your values, offer your stuff. If your stuff is good, you probably want to get it to as many people want it. So, that's the equation. Okay. When I wrote Getting Things Done and it became a bestseller, I said, okay, I'm done. I got my whole life, career, and consciousness into a manual so I could get run over by a bus tomorrow and everything could be fine. But God somehow wasn't willing to take me yet. I said, so now what do I do? Well, okay, David, you teach this stuff. How much more efficiently or effectively could you get this valuable information to as many people in the world as you can with as little effort as possible? So that's been my game since 2002. So that whole idea, I would think, well, a lot of people want to scale because they're either aspirational, entrepreneurial, or whatever. Some people should scale because what they've got is highly valuable and they'd like to get it to as many people as might be interested in using that value. And so I guess I'll be talking to both with what I might have to say, and that's probably who you talk to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you open out your book, your wonderful book, Getting Things Done. I have a copy here. For those listening, I encourage you to go out and get it. For those who are watching on YouTube, this is an incredibly instructive manual and so super practical in terms of all of the aspects of getting things done. You quote beautifully, ineffective personal organizational systems create huge subconscious resistance to undertaking even bigger projects and goals that will likely not be managed well and that will in turn cause even more distraction and stress. Can you explain what you mean by this? Because in many ways it speaks to your thinking around scaling with purpose. And I see the GTD methodology as almost an antidote to what is cited as the single greatest impediment of why SME leaders don't scale, which is lack of ambition. Or rather, I think when you dig deeper into that, it's fear or it's an inability to move past the mountain of things that they currently have in their plates.
I think it's probably the latter, Brendan, more than anything else. Everybody would come on, if you're out there expressing and sharing, you just kind of want to share it with more people. But if you feel like, wow, the more I share, the more complexity I create, and I can't manage the complexity I have, there's a subconscious or a subliminal part of you that's just going to resist it. Every time you create some new vision or goal, you're going to throw yourself out of your comfort zone because you're going to have new projects. You're going to have a lot of stuff you're going to have to stop doing. You're going to have to rethink a lot of stuff about your systems and your processes if that's what you want to do. And again, most people are up to here, in the SME game. That's where, they're already filled up. They've already created probably more they can handle in their life anyway, just given what's on their plate. So knowing how to recalibrate to scale is the big issue. And that's a whole lot about, yeah, probably to some degree, it's about what do you want in life? Is that something do you want to create something that has that kind of scale to it? Are you fine with the farm you're raising, or the organic milk you're producing, and the market you have. You know what? Because I know quite a number of people that say, I don't want to be any bigger. This is cool. This is cool for me. Any bigger is not in my game. So I think people need to get honest with themselves about the nature of the game they are interested in or might be interested in. And then, to my point, you need to make sure you handle the processes that get your day to day. See, you don't need time. You need space. You need room. You need room in your head to be able to think strategically, creatively, about, how to get to where you want to go and even where you want to go. But if you're up to here, you got no room.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what I came up with is, how do I get room?
Yeah.
You implement anything in that book, Getting Things Done, it's going to give you more space, psychically, mentally, whatever. How you use that space is up to you. Some people use it to just be more creative. Some people use it to be more strategic. Some people use it to be more of service to their staff, to their kids, to their family, to their community. And some people just use it to be more present with whatever they're doing. So, having more space is probably going to be the critical factor. But then what you do with that space is going to be up to where you want to go and what's the nature of the life and the work that you want to create. When you do that, if you're going to recalibrate, one of the things that's just as important for you is to recalibrate your processes and how do I manage the increase in volume and complexity that's going to happen if I decide I want to take this to a new level of game.
Yeah, and you speak directly to the fifth principle of our 10 principle ScaleX framework process. And you also, in your definition of scaling with purpose, or in terms of your thinking around scaling with purpose, you're absolutely aligned to what I always appeal to the listeners to do. If you have a wonderful product or service, then I feel you've an obligation to bring this to the world. And there are practices, there are methodologies out there like GTD, which helps actually clear the space to give you that creative thinking time to create a wonderful vision for the future. You say that in training and coaching many thousands of people, I have found that lack of time is not the major issue for them. Though they may think it is, the real problem is a lack of clarity and definition about what a project really is and what associated next action steps are required. GTD requires two basic components: defining what done means and what doing looks like. Can you explain this a little bit further, David?
Well, I just came at this called, how do I get my head clear and keep it clear as my life got more complex and interesting and busy and all that stuff. Because I was a great proponent of clear space, like black belt in martial arts and so forth. That's like, wow, being really clear makes it much easier to function no matter what you're doing. So I just sort of uncovered the algorithms about how do you manage the process. And by the way, back to a little further, previous point, Brendan, the two things I think CMEs that need to produce a scale is clarity and freedom in their head to be able to think creatively and strategically. But number two, they need a good process to be able to then implement something that could scale. You have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of sole proprietors, a lot of SME owners that are charismatic themselves, and they've been able to create things out of their own buzz and out of their own personality and out of their own style in terms of what they do and their expression of it. But how do they scale that? See, I didn't even know, Brenda, when I wrote Getting Things Done, I was just trying to capture 25 years of my career and put it in a manual. I had no idea whether anybody'd buy it or not. I just had to get it out of my head in case I got run over by a bus. Here's what I've learned in terms of that. That's when if people hadn't read my book, it could feel a little overwhelming when you read it because it's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's simple stuff. It's not like a foreign language or a new technology. It's very simple things we all know how to do. Write stuff down, make next action decisions, organize appropriate categories of things you look at regularly. so you can feel comfortable about what you're doing. So, duh, that's kind of a big duh, but I did it and I explained it in such a way. And I said, okay, here's if you really want to implement this and maintain a clear head, no matter how complex your life gets, here's how to do that. So I did that. And once I did that and it became a bestseller, I said, I'm done.
Yeah.
But God didn't take me, So I said, I guess I'm still around. Now what am I going to do? Well, let me see how many people I can get this to. But then to be able to then figure out how to take that methodology, that intellectual property that I developed, and how do you scale that? How do you take it beyond David's personality so that it could? And the first weekend the book was published in 2001 in the U.S. And a woman emailed me. She said, David, I picked up your book at Barnes and Noble, read it, and implemented it, changed my life. I went, oh my God, I could do this. It's possible to actually scale this thing outside of my own personality by being able to put something in some format that people could get, and sort of catch at least part or significant parts of this and improve their conditions of their life. And that changed my life, changed my career. To say, okay, I guess we can scale this globally. So that's been, our work for the last 20 years.
Well, we've teased the listeners with getting things done and how to go about this. I mean, you've scaled your own business. I'm making an assumption here, but I think it's quite a safe assumption that you've used your own methodology to scale your own business. So, I feel back to kind of the original comments and thinking around lack of ambition. I feel that certainly the listeners to this show and the wider audience have a huge desire to scale, but I believe that we're all wired to want to grow. What gets in the way is the lack of know-how to do that. And again, we, like yourself, we run a program. It's not an inexpensive program for 1 year. Everything that is in that program is also captured in our book, which is cost £15, but often people need handheld through a process. So what I'd love to do today is do a little mini masterclass for our listeners, David, on getting things done, if you're up
Sure.
for that. So
Yeah.
brilliant. Well, look, you outline in your book the 5 steps of mastering workflow, which I'd love to dive a little bit deeper in today. So can you share with our listeners what those 5 steps are to begin with?
Sure. Well, you need to capture things that have your attention, clarify exactly what they mean, organize the results of that thinking in some trusted system that you then review, appropriately to feel confident about your choices. So I'll unpack those 5 steps. It's capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. It's how you get your kitchen under control. You walk into your kitchen, if it's out of control, you go, oh my God, I got guests coming, tornado hit my kitchen. What's the first thing you do is you notice what's off, what needs attention, right? A lot of stuff in your kitchen won't need attention, but some stuff will because it's out of place. It's not in the right order. There's not what it needs to be, where it needs to be. So the first thing you do is recognize what's off or what needs attention. That's the capture process. And so in an SME, you would go, wait a minute, what has our attention as a company right now?
Yeah.
Equity, increase our credit line. Oh my God, hire an XYZ, or oh, come on, you get an infinite number of things that might have people's attention. So that's the first thing, is just identify what those things are.
Yeah.
So
And
that
what I loved about your book is that you spoke to the reader, and I was thinking about this again this morning. I was out running with my dog early this morning, and I was thinking about this conversation coming up, and you talk about capturing everything that's in your head. So we're trying to support millions of ambitious leaders of SMEs out there in terms of that's our vision, that's our purpose in terms of what motivates me to get up every day. So that's the big North Star. But as I was running, I was frustrated because the dog isn't trained as well as I would like to, and she's a German Shepherd. And I was thinking, okay, I need to really spend time and train the dog. I was thinking about, my wife had an appointment later on that morning. What can I do to support her and getting the kids out for school? And I was thinking about the the program workshop that we have coming up next week. So all of these things were taking space within my head, competing for attention. And you call this out in your book in terms of capturing all of those things. Can you drill into that a little bit more? Because for me, this was
Oh, Brendan, yeah, pretty simple. Did you make any progress on those things when you were thinking about them?
I no, they were just they were just
Dude. I'm sorry. What do you teach? Efficiency and effectiveness.
yeah,
You just drained energy
yeah,
and used your mental and psychic energy in hugely ineffective ways.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So let me fast forward a little bit. If you had captured that thought called dog training, right, which I would have written down somewhere, right, you'd have captured some thought. Well, let's take that one, right, and then I'd have thrown that into my in basket. If I were running or whatever, if I wrote that down somewhere, I'd say, hey, oh yeah, God, German Shepherd, she needs to, okay, get dog up to cruise control with me being comfortable about taking her out for a run or a walk. That would be the project, right? That'd be on my project list called "Get Dog on Cruise Control." Next action. What do you need to do next? You probably haven't decided that. That's why your brain keeps running through it because you haven't finished your thinking.
Yeah.
What would you need to do to get that dog under cruise control? Right. By the way, right now, what would your answer be, Brendan?
Either I spend the time training her, so educate
No,
myself
no,
on
no,
what she needs. But
no. Spend the time training her. Is that truly the next action, or do you need some information about training?
Absolutely. So likely explore who locally could help
And
me
how
train
would
the
you do?
dog.
How would you do that? Come on.
Probably
Let me.
Google straight away dog trainers in the
There
local
you
area.
go. And you could do that right now, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So you haven't finished your decision making and thinking about this thing. That's why it keeps spinning. So I just figured out, how do you finish your thinking about stuff? If you had that on some sort of list that you'd see when you were down on a computer and actually had time to surf the web, and knew that you'd be able to see that as an option, that would not have popped into your head.
Yeah. Yeah. And this
Right.
was a
But by the way, you're not born knowing that. I
yes.
had to figure that out. That's an algorithm. You actually have to train yourself to think about how do I need to think about this email or this thing that has my attention. Step 2, clarify. The
Yeah.
first is capture the thought, which you didn't, and clarify, which you certainly haven't done, and then organize the results, which you haven't done, which you then see when you're at a computer and have time to look at that. Oh yeah. Oh, I got no brain left, but that'd be an easy thing to do is surf dog trainers. And you do that. So then you do that and you feel really good. And you're not even close to that yet, but you're close.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And this was a revelation for me. And I mean, I
You
like to,
wanted you wanted a workshop. Here it is.
I love this. So let's go back in case anyone has missed this. What we're saying is capturing every thought, and ultimately what I
Well,
came
let
to
me
know
let
from
me let me let me stop you there. You don't want to capture every thought. You'd have to capture 50,000 a day because that's how many you have. You want to capture any thoughts about something you think you might want to decide or do something about. Sorry, there's noise outside, so let me close my door. You want to capture thoughts about things that you think you still need to decide or do something about.
yeah. And practically, what do you feel is, let's make this super practical for people. So there are recurring thoughts there. And I think the key is there, if something is recurring, then as you again call out in the book, if it's recurring, then it hasn't been dealt with and it will continue to recur until you deal with it. So these are certainly thoughts that you should be capturing. How would you,
Yeah.
how would you
And
propose?
by the way, you could be reminded of them at 3 o'clock in the morning when you wake up. Oh my God!
Yeah.
Because your brain doesn't have
Yeah.
one. If it
Yeah.
did, it would only remind you of stuff when you could do something about it.
So we capture those recurring thoughts, and lots of the listeners will relate to that kind of 3 o'clock wake up call, and previously, certainly in my previous role, I used to send myself an email in the middle of the night with those recurring thoughts so I could address the next day.
Yeah,
What,
that
what
works.
what would you suggest to our listeners is the most practical way of beginning to capture, or I suppose discern that these things are recurring in the first place, and it takes a level of mindfulness. Yeah. For those listening, David's holding up the old pen and piece of paper. Yeah.
That's the best,
Yeah.
because no wires, no internet connection, no batteries.
Yeah.
It's instant.
Yeah.
So some sort of a low tech capture tool. That's what I use 98% of the time.
Yeah. So clarifying then, we review this list and we clarify then, can you what we're going to do with the items that we have captured in this list. Can you just dig a little bit deeper on that, David?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. First question is, are you actually going to do something about it? You wrote down dog, right? Or mom, or bank, or tooth, or whatever. You might have captured something about those things need something I need to do with them. Then it was like, well, okay, is that something you actually intend to do something about? And some of those you go, God, no, that's a crazy idea. I'm not going to do anything about that. So then that you have three options there. Then it's either trash, called dumb idea, too much wine, get out of there. It could be reference. That's something I might want to just be referred to later on. It might have been a quote I thought of, or a good idea I might want to use for my staff meeting or something like that. Nothing to do on it now, but I want to save that reference material. And it could be something you say, there's nothing to do on that right now, but I might later. It could be that I want to wait for 3 months to see what my dog does before I decide I want to get a trainer, see how good I am at doing what I learned already. Or it could be anything called incubate. So anything that is non-actionable that has your attention is either trash, reference material, or hold for later review and assessment. If it is something you want to act on, you and dog, for instance, she needs to get better at or whatever, then it's like, great. Then there's one critical question called, what would be the next thing you needed to do to move that needle? The very next action, which it took you about 3 steps to get to. Your next action was at the computer, not find a trainer or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are fine. Those are good ideas. Those are just project, sub projects that need to get finished in some way. But you didn't know how to engage with this yet. So getting down to the engagement level, you have to get down to the granularity of what physical, visible activity might I need to do right now to move on mom's birthday, or increase my bank equity, or hiring a VP of social media, or whatever the heck people might want to have. And then we say, well, will one action finish that? Do you think your Google search is going to finish getting your dog up to speed? Probably not. In which case, you have something called a project. Well, what's your desired outcome? What does done mean about dog? Right? And so that would then go on my project list. So you need to clarify what's the action step required. What does doing look like, and what does done mean? And again, that's a cognitive muscle you need to train, because people aren't born thinking that way. Believe me, I've spent tens of thousands of hours with some of the best and brightest people you'd ever meet on the planet, walking them through that decision-making process they've avoided, which is why they're feeling overwhelmed, feeling like they're up to here, they got no room, because they just haven't clarified what their work really is yet at that discrete level. So that's the clarify step. Is it actionable? If so, what's the next action? If one action won't finish it, what's the project? Then step 3 is that then, okay, if you can't finish all that stuff right now, where are you gonna put reminders to this? How do you organize reminders of, oh yeah, I need to surf the web about that, and oh yeah, I need to be reminded to get dog on cruise control until that's done. So then you need some organization system that has a trusted system that you can keep track of the actions you did take and the projects you need to finish. But step 3, organize, and reflect. Make sure when you sit down at a computer and have time, you look at that as an option. You see your list of all the stuff you've come up with that you might want to surf the web about. And that's reflect, where you step back and take a look at the inventory that you've defined. Hopefully, if you've done step 1 through 3, you've captured, clarified, and organized. Now, when you reflect, you're stepping back and looking at a larger inventory and a more appropriate, complete inventory of what you might want to do as options, like a menu in a restaurant, right? Then step 5 would just be, okay, what do I order tonight from the, do I want chicken or do I want veggie? So those are the 5 steps. I mean, I hate to say this because maybe it's just I'm old and cranky, but it's like, duh.
Yeah, and intuitively people know this, but
They don't.
yeah,
I disagree. They do not intuitively know this. I think they intuitively recognize this, but they don't know it. If they knew it, they'd do it.
yes. Well, I think knowledge is power. Knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. So the application of the knowing is what gets the results, and what you have laid out here in your book is a wonderful way to apply. I think what people will look, and it's so instructive, it's so practical, that what I'm saying is that there'd be nothing in the book that they won't recognize in terms of oh yeah, I know how to do it, but it's so instructive and practical in terms of how
Sure.
to apply it.
Well, come on, Brendan. If anybody listening or watching this keeps a calendar, they're already doing it.
Yeah, yeah,
Why
yeah,
keep a calendar? Why
yeah,
not do it in your head?
yeah,
Oh, because I might forget. Oh, duh. Your head was not designed, it did not evolve to remember, remind, prioritize, and manage relationships
yeah.
between more than four things. Cognitive scientists have now proved that. But most people are using their head as their office, and your head's a shitty office.
Yeah.
It is.
So in terms of kind of the, again, being super practical on a daily basis, what does your application of the 5 steps look like? Do you have a process where, in the morning time you will capture what is in your head, you'll clarify that, and you'll step through the 5 steps? In the evening, do you reflect, review? Is there a daily habit now that's just ingrained as to the way you do things, that you don't have to think about this anymore? It's just become habitual.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I've done this for 40 years, so
Yeah.
something pops into my head. If I'm not at my desk,
Yeah,
I write it
very good.
down.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It's right here.
yeah,
I mean, that's created some of the coolest things I've ever done in my life, which is
yeah,
random notes I thought were brilliant when I had them because
yeah,
I had them. And then later on, I went,
yeah,
dumb idea, or, ooh, that's cool. You might
yeah,
want to do something about that. So, so I'm capturing all the time. It's just a habit. I don't keep stuff in my head,
yeah,
right? So that just happens whenever it happens, and it could happen anywhere. Your some of your most creative thoughts will not happen where you're going to implement them.
yeah,
You'd be walking to the beach thinking of something you might want to do at the meeting. You'll be buying bread thinking of something you need to bring up the market. You'll be buying in the marketing meeting thinking you need bread. Come on, this stuff shows up wherever. So you need a ubiquitous capture tool. No wires, no Wi-Fi, no batteries. That's it. So that for me is universal. It's ubiquitous. So I capture, but you'll notice if you saw my in basket right now, it's totally empty. These notes are going to be thrown out and into my in tray until they're processed. So I go through steps 2 and 3, clarify and organize, and then I go through those notes and I go, okay, what would that look like? And I do that probably once every day or two. I literally clean up everything I've captured and everything in email in and everything in any other channel that I might have input in. And by the way, there's a big issue about channel creep out there right now. People are onto Slack, they're onto WhatsApp, they're onto whatever. They're getting all kinds of stuff from lots of different
yeah,
places, but it's all in,
yeah,
meaning it's all in the in basket. So
yeah.
now I have to decide what of that is relevant to me. What decisions do I need to make? And so I just process that stuff usually every 24, 48 hours. If I'm on a roll, I may go a little longer than that, but usually my email is zero now. It's zero right now. My physical in basket is zero. It's zero right now. But and then at that point, where I put the results of that thinking is in some sort of an organizational system. I just have a list manager. And that's all people really need, is to keep track of, okay, what are the projects I have or the steps I need to take, and then put those in some appropriate list in some way. That then step four, I make sure I take a look. If I'm going out for errands, I need to look at my errands list. I've sometimes decided an errand I need to take. I forgot long ago that I even came up with that, but it's now time for errands. I go, oh yeah, I need to go take my watch to get a new battery for it. And so, so that's the reflect. And reflect could take a lot of levels. Like reflect on your life, reflect on your strategic plan, reflect on all kinds of things that you need to do, to feel more comfortable. So stage 5 is, okay, out of all those things I might need to do right now, what's the best choice? And that's the engage factor, which, assuming you've done 1 through 4 within a degree of completeness, I've captured, clarified, organized, and looked at the whole game. You're making good, trusted choices that Brendan talking to me right now is what you need to do, and you don't have anything else on your mind, hopefully.
No, the only thing I have in my mind as I have you here in front of me is that I'm very envious that you have a zero inbox. And as much as I've tried over the years, I have this love-hate relationship with email. It's such a wonderful way to communicate. And I learned this new term asynchronously on one of our guests in one of the earlier seasons, where I can send out, I can take time in my day and kind of batch send emails. And of course, what's going to come back to me, I can't really prepare for when those responses are going to come back in. But every time there's a response, it sends my head into another direction. And often what I've found is an inbox full of lots of unread emails, because I tend to open the email and then my signal that I need to do something with it is actually to mark it as unread. So my inbox now is absolutely full, jam packed with unread emails that in my head I have to either delete it, action it, review it, save it for another time. What do you advocate, David, and what would you advocate to the listeners? Because I suspect what I'm saying resonates with quite a lot of people who are listening. What would you say to do, coming from this podcast, to get your inbox in order?
Do you have garbage in your house?
Uh, I have a bin that we put it in.
How often do you empty it?
We put it into the main bin. So there's a bin in the kitchen, and then that bin is emptied probably once a day, put into the main bin, and then the
Do
main
you
bin.
do you distinguish which garbage needs to go there and which garbage needs to wait?
No, it's immediate. There's a decision made. It's either goes into the recycle bin or the non-recycle bin.
That's your answer.
So, do you advocate then creating time in the day or time in the week where
You better
you?
have time in your day. It's going to take you at least 30 to 60 minutes just to stay current with new stuff coming in
Yes,
24 hours.
yes,
So if you're wall to wall or don't take time, do that, you're going to get an hour behind per day.
yes.
That's going to take Saturday and Sunday that you should have time with your kids or your family or whatever, that you're going to try to clean up the garbage you should have been dealt with when it
Yeah,
came in.
yeah, yeah.
It's not garbage. You just said, wait, that's good food. That's bad food. That's whatever. You need to make distinction about what that stuff is, but you still haven't finished your decision. So you're just looking at a lot of unfinished thinking, unfinished decision making that's bothering you. And that's why you're getting numb to email.
That is very true. And then, do you set aside time? So if you have,
Nah, no. What do you set aside time to brush your teeth
no,
or
well,
take a shower or take a shower?
I take a similar time most days.
Yeah, similar time most days. Me too.
Yeah,
Right. I, so I do this when I feel like I need to do this. If you let it go longer than 24, 48 hours, though, You got a deep scrub you're going to have to do, and you're going to avoid taking a shower.
So what happens to our ability to think clearly, and to, you know, when we talk about and reference the statistics that less than 1% of leaders of SMEs actually achieve scale. It's fair to say there's, you know, we can make an assumption there that those scaling leaders are incredibly productive. What happens if we don't create this time in terms of appealing to the listeners, in terms of the impediment that we're creating to scale? And what action steps would you encourage them to take as a result of listening to this podcast that will, you know, support their the progress towards their ambition to scale?
Well, what I've suggested in this podcast won't solve those issues. It'll make it clearer what those issues are and what you might need to do about them. That's all. It's a process. So I don't have the answer to them. They have the answers. They just have to decide how important it is and what's in the way of that, and what do they need to handle, and then what do they need to manage as a process so they can keep going, you know, in some relatively stress-free way while they get to the next level of scale they want to do. But they're going to, they have to be able to step out of their comfort zone. But again, you know, come on, Brenda, the biggest human addiction is control. And that's why people don't want to move out of their comfort zone. They want to lose control. That's why people procrastinate. I don't want to step into something I don't know what to do next, or if it's right. You said you don't know if what I'm deciding is the right thing I need to do about my dog or about whatever. And that's why you'll avoid it. It's because you don't want to feel out of control. I don't want to make a bad decision right now. Right. So what you have to do is go, okay, let me just decide what's the next thing to do to find out if that was the good thing to do. So that's why getting down to the very granular next action is so healing. As mundane as it is, that's how powerful it is. Because it gets down to the place where it's called you and God and the earth meet.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you found that, you know, through this work and through your coaching, that momentum creates momentum, that the person that you're coaching, the business leader who takes that next step, the minimum viable action to advance this decision, that ultimately momentum is created by virtue of them stepping out of this kind of procrastination state?
Not only that, they model that for all the people around them. They need to get that as well so they can make that happen.
Yeah. So let's speak to that. How do leaders then who have bought into the GTD methodology bring this into their teams and their organizations?
Do all of their directs and people and assistant know what a next action is and have next actions on all the things they're all committed to? That's all they have to do is hold them to point about that question. Now, first of all, to point about what. Most of their directs don't know what the hell their projects are that they need to decide actions about, even their assistant. Trust me, I've spent thousands of hours in some of the best and brightest places you'd ever imagine. Watching what happens when they go, well, great, give me your project. What have I handed you as a project right now? Great. What's your next step on that? Great. And just a conversation with their assistant. Okay, we just said we're going to have a staff party. What's the next step? Can you handle that? Great. What do you think you need to do to make that forward? Now, maybe he or she knows how to do that really well. They've read my book. They're already a GTD or whatever, in which case they'd already be, up the food chain, in terms of this, in terms of staffing. But most people, frankly, this is all new stuff to them.
Yeah. I think that posing that question as a leader to to any of their team members who want to be directed as to the next steps, the retort, if you're being asked about what next step should I take, in terms of getting that person to clarify what done looks like. I love that question. It's a question I often pose myself. What, let's paint a picture of what great looks like, in terms of the outcome. What, aligned to what you say, David, what does done look like? And ultimately, what is the next viable action, the minimum viable action that you can take in this instant to advance towards that, once that's clarified? Why do people really struggle with the what does done look like in terms of clarifying the outcome?
I don't know, brother. Beats me. I've
Is it?
tried for 40 years to coach people, educate people about the value of that. And some people get it,
Yeah,
and a lot of people don't.
yeah, yeah,
Well, a lot of people get it conceptually. Oh, it makes a good idea, but they don't do it.
yeah,
They got a problem with their neighbor because their neighbor's fence is overcroaching, and the neighbor's complaining about,
yeah,
what does done mean? You know,
yeah,
cruise control with my neighbor. And most people have no idea that that's actually a project that they ought to identify and have a next step about it, so they can either relax about it, called nothing they can do, or they hop on the train and move it to some result.
yeah. Have you seen a pattern of behavior in those who really get this, who are really good at this, in terms of, what steps that they need to take in order to, I suppose, condition themselves to arrive at the point where this just becomes natural?
Yeah, takes 2 to 5 years generally. Well, I've had people get it right away because they were so close to this already in terms of their thinking and their behaviors and best practices that they didn't take them that long. But for most people, well, come on. I don't know, when did you read this book, and how come I just had to coach you about your dog?
Yeah, yeah. I need to take a pen and a piece of paper out with me on my runs. That's because here's the challenge I have, as something you alluded
No,
to
no,
earlier.
but that would not have occurred to you first on your run with your dog. If you'd captured it when it first showed up, it would not show up on your run.
Yes, so true. Yeah, yeah, so true.
So how long did it take you, or would it take you to think, to learn that as a habit?
Well, you
You
see,
answer your own question.
yeah, and I feel I'm down the road in this. I tend to, on a daily basis, I will clarify my three highest priorities for the day, the tasks that are going to, those action steps that are going to move the
Yeah,
needle.
sure. Yeah, good for you.
So
But when at some point would you say, calling, uh, you know, finding a good trainer for my dog might be absolutely the next thing I ought to do tomorrow if I have a window of about 10 minutes of time? And you haven't had that option available to you yet, but it could have been something that had finished quite a while ago. I don't know how long you've had this on your radar.
yeah, what
See,
happens?
you're victim to all the big things, and here's the things we need to do. We do the big things. There's magic in the mundane.
Tell me more about that.
Handle the mundaneness of your life and watch how much of the bigger stuff is going to show up naturally and automatically, that you don't have to inspire yourself to do it. You can't help it.
We tend to drown in the mundane in terms of letting it. It almost acts as a disease to progress. And
Well, here's one of the problems, and we're writing this in our next book, about GTD and teams. Like, how do you work with other people to get this done? Is that you're now living in a 24/7 world.
yeah,
Your world is not stopping,
yeah,
right? It's always out. It's on. It's on. It's changing. It's on. It's global now. right? You're getting global,
Yeah.
right? This is
Yeah.
hopefully going global.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and so global 24/7. Some part of you wants to stay involved, catch up, don't lose. The fear, fear of missing out, fear of missing out. FOMO, it's huge, and that's why people say, in order to stay current and comfortable, I have to work harder, harder, harder. I have to integrate more and more and more, whatever. And there's an old personal growth idiom: you can't get enough of what you don't really need, right? And most people think I need to work harder to get in control of my life. No, you don't. You can never work hard enough. There's not enough you could ever do to feel like you've done enough.
Yeah.
Ever,
Yeah.
ever. Give it up.
Yeah.
So that's why I think you had a question you sent to me about my last quote about from Herman Miller about sort of more of the quality of life stuff.
Yeah, I would. Well, this is. I was curious because you sign off your emails with this beautiful quote: "The aim of life is to live, and to live means to be aware, joyously, drunkenly, serenely, divinely aware." So I think, I was my question to you was, why is that significant to you? But
What else is there? I mean, Herman Miller described my life, my aspirations, and my quality of life, better than anybody I'd ever done.
yeah. So where do we start? Well, for those listening to this, when they've actually invested the last hour, the pen and the paper. Okay.
That's it. Pen and paper.
Yeah.
Get everything that's on your mind,
Yeah.
little, big, personal, professional, doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Write it down, or get it. You can capture it digitally, but you'll lose
Yeah.
it digitally. But best to just take a pen and paper, because it's not a permanent thing. It's just a placeholder until
Mm,
you can move to the next steps.
mm,
First thing you need to do is just unload, guys. Come on, everybody listening or watching this at some point's made a list and felt better. I mean,
yeah.
nothing changed in their world except how they were engaged with their world. So nothing's going to change in your world by making a list of all this stuff except how you're engaged with it. And that
Yeah.
will happen automatically. And I absolutely guarantee you that.
And is there anything you would recommend in terms of how you list that? Is that bullet pointed? Is that
No, 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 no.
just
Don't bother. Don't bother. That's step 3. Once you decide how to organize the results of your thinking about what are you going to do about these things you've captured.
yeah.
But that's the problem: is people have compressed and condensed and compacted all this stuff into one thing. Write down your priorities. Oh my God, grow up. You know, you've got to go through a process before you know what to do in your kitchen. When you walk in and it's out of control, you need to identify stuff. You need to clarify what they mean. You need to then step in the back and reflect on stuff going on before you start to reflect on the situation and engage how to cook for your friends. So again, I didn't make this up. I just recognized what you need to do. But anybody trying to compress or compact all that into, okay, set your priorities or just go move on the most important things,
Mm,
you're just going to blow a fuse.
mm.
You may get people inspired while they're watching your podcast, but they're going to walk away and then just have a drink and go, oh, screw it. I don't have time.
Mm, mm. So the recommended next steps is to go and get, if you haven't already got a copy of Getting Things Done, we certainly recommend that you do that. I tend to kind of journal on what's in my head. So it ends up pages and pages and pages of stuff that typically isn't about the dog needing training, but essentially whatever's kind of dominating my thoughts. This is ultimately where, when we say priorities, they're the top three tasks. Ultimately, it's derived from what is in my head. It's just my language around kind of what, how do I make progress? How do I advance in terms of what's in my head? But there are lots of things. Once I create space, there are other things that once that space is created, that quickly fill up the space. So that
No,
here.
absolutely. And by the way, I don't denigrate any of the processes you've probably come up with that are very useful in that term. Believe me, I've done consulting and organizational change, consulting, for years, since 1982 when I started my whole career in this world. And there are a lot of great models. Here's high value versus high effort required, or the Eisenhower, whatever, or the Harvey balls. So what what do you need to do first about any of
Yeah.
this? So there are a lot of good strategic thinking models. Once your head's clear, okay, and here's where we want to go, and then ways to organize or structure that. So I don't mean to denigrate anything that you might have already created. I don't know your model, Brendan, but I'm sure it's all great stuff. Based on your experience of this, I'm just suggesting that what people need is a clearer space to understand what that is, and then what they need to do about it, and then have a personal process that then may be able to be scaled to a more organizational process about how to make all that happen.
Yeah, and this is key. I mean, certainly this feeds into our 10 principle ScaleX framework, which is focused on organizational scaling, but ultimately it starts, the very first principle is psyche. And I mean, given your background in martial arts, at the outset of your book, you reference, create a mind like water, in terms of creating getting the mindset to a place where ultimately you feel inspired to want to scale. I think when your mind is already overloaded with mundanity, with just stuff, then the last thing that you will want to embark on is what you perceive as more stuff, which is a greater, more expansive vision. So this is why I'm really keen to share this methodology, because ultimately anything that frees the mind of the organizational leader is going to support them in creating space to think about an expansive vision of the future, which ultimately allows them to bring their wonderful product or service to the wider world. And that's for me is critical. And that's why I think that, I wanted to bring you on today, David, to share your methodology, to give our listeners tools and practices to create that space in the first place.
Yay. Hopefully it helped somebody out there. Yay.
I feel it will. Look, I've enjoyed, the last hour has absolutely flown. Before we move into the close, is there anything you feel that you want to share with our listeners that we haven't touched off today that you feel is fundamentally important?
Well, I think we touched on it, but I want to reinforce it, that if you're going to scale, you're going to become a leader. You need to lead whatever the process is that's going to scale you. And to become a leader, you need to both model the behaviors you want to make sure that your people implement. If you're in a meeting and don't take notes of things that you might need to do, you're modeling bad behavior. If you're writing stuff down and you're following up with people, wait a minute, here's something because you're keeping a list called waiting for, of things you've delegated to staff, and you bring them forward to that when you have a conversation with them, you're modeling something about being close tolerant about people's agreement with themselves and about the process standing intact, as opposed to having a lot of leaks in there. So I would say, that's the real key to scaling, is both your own inspirational vision, which Brendan has talked about, and your desire and your willingness to follow that desire to say, I want to take this to a bigger level of scale. But then my coaching, and you better build a process for yourself personally, so you have the bandwidth to think in the most strategic and creative ways about that, as well as a process that you manage your staff with to make sure they can implement as you start to come up with new decisions and new things to do about that.
Hear, hear. David, it's been an absolute privilege to host you on the podcast today. I always pose this question in closing to our guests, given the richness of the experiences that you have to date, and an American citizen who is now living in Europe, in Amsterdam, and has traveled the world extensively to bring your message to the world. Can you share with our listeners 3 timeless takeaways?
Get stuff out of your head. Your head's for having ideas, not holding them. That's proven by cognitive science, right? Number 2, pay attention to what has your attention, and start to engage with that appropriately so that you can then apply the appropriate practices to get off your mind. Step 3, let go, relax, trust your intuition, because that knows who you are and what you need to do, and it knows you better than you, and it loves you, and will give you good guidance if you're willing to be quiet enough to listen.
Wonderful wisdom, David. Really quite profound, and something that we say to, certainly to those that I coach and those we coach through our program, is the importance of those 3 small words: let it go. Just surrender often to your intuition. But look, I have I've really enjoyed today. What's next for you?
Well, we have a next GTD book, hopefully my last. Oh my God.
Don't say that.
We haven't, people over the years have said, people who got my methodology said, oh my God, this has made such a difference in my world. I wish everybody around me could get this. And we never had a good manual about how to do that and why that, and so forth. So I've got a great co-author, Ed Lamont, in the UK, and he and I have now crafted a book that will launch first part of 2024, probably in January, with Penguin, about teams. How do you get to, how do you implement this with other people, and what are the best practices about how we engage with others? Because quite frankly, any of you, if you want to get cool stuff done with other people, that's either fun, strategic, or whatever, you're going to require other people. Even if you're a sole contributor, an artist, or whatever, you're still going to need other people, and engaging with them appropriately to be able to make sure that your expression and your thing really works. So I think we've uncovered, and pretty much identified all those best practices. So that's my inspiration, and I'm enthused because it's been wanted and needed for years about my methodology. So I'm excited about that. That's what's next. So
Brilliant.
That's coming. Yeah. Let's do it. So can we do another interview?
Absolutely. Let's. Well, that's what I was. That's what I was going to suggest.
Get
you back on the podcast in at lunchtime in January 2024. I'd love to have you back. It reminds me of I think it was the Zig Ziglar who said it. You don't build businesses, you build people, and people build businesses, and this is so important for scaling. So we're going to we're going
My
to
wife is signaling me about something.
Okay, well, look, on that note, before I let you go, if people want to connect with you, David, where best to reach you?
Well, I'm David at davidco.com. That's my email address. And our website is www.gettingthingsdone.com. And if you go to www.gettingthingsdone.com/YouTube, you see tons of short little videos I've done, my 3 TEDx's or whatever. If you want little short versions or visions of the stuff I've been talking about. So all that's there.
Brilliant. Well, look, once again, thanks for your wonderful wisdom today, for sharing your time with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Take care.
Mine too, Brendan. This was fun. Yay.